It's 6 o'clock and welcome everybody. Let me get my agenda back up. This is the problem being Zoom-meister and trying to look at. So I call this meeting to order at 6 o'clock. Everybody is here. Kelly's on Zoom. Now I've kept board chair's remarks on the agenda, but I really don't have any tonight. Other than it was a lovely meeting last time. I think it can be a lovely meeting this time. But anytime anyone has anything they'd like to share at that point, let me know and we can make arrangements. Deborah, you have a motion that we discussed last night that, we can discuss again tonight.
Okay, thank you. So I'm not quite sure procedurally how I should begin. I have a motion specifically for the supervisory union. So maybe we should do that one first and then do the combined one. Is that how we do it? Because I have a combined one, the SD and the supervisory union.
I think if the SU approves the one that did you do a separate different one for the SU or?
Yes, it's exactly the same as the one I did for the SD, but I have that contingency one that incorporates both boards. So is that the motion I'm making at this point?
Yes, if we approve it, you can just.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So I move that in light of the event on April 3rd, Monday, the directors of the Windham Southeast Supervisory Union and the directors of the Windham Southeast School District express heartfelt sympathy to the family of Leah, Rosin Pritchard for their loss. The boards extend condolences to everyone who works tirelessly on behalf of so many in our district, to everyone in our community who is devastated by this tragedy. Thank you to Groundworks Collaborative. We are with you in spirit. WSESU Board, WSESD Board.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thanks, Kelly. Any opposed or abstentions? Thank you, Deborah. The motion carries.
Thank you.
Can you email me that?
I will.
Thank
Do you want it right now? A hard copy?
If
Email?
you've got a hard copy.
I do. I have a hard copy.
Whatever works.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to the consent agenda. I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes of March 29th, 2023.
Thank you. So moved.
Thank you. Is there any discussion, amendments, deletions, additions?
I like that little trick of taking a photo of the Zoom attendees.
Let's see if I can do it a second time.
That was very tricky. I'm impressed. Okay. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Thank you. And the minutes are approved. And I have to switch screens again. Okay, under finance, the only thing I'm showing is the warrants and payrolls. So I would like to move that we approve the warrants of March 29th, 2023 in the amount of $1,449,966.95. And the payrolls of March 24th, 2023 in the amount of $559,626.21.
So moved.
No, that was my motion, but that's okay.
Oh, so sorry.
It doesn't matter. I usually just do it that way because I read
Got it.
them out in the record. Is there any discussion? Questions? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and the warrants and payrolls are approved. And moving on to the administrative report. Take it away, Mark.
Sure. So I'll give a little background and Tate will talk a bit more. Back in January, we did a more formal presentation on Act 173 and how we're preparing the school district. And we had Joe Gruda with us, Whitney Line, Tate, and Brandy Levesque, who really drove that presentation. And although it was a different board, I believe everybody here tonight on the new board was in attendance in January, which is great. So tonight, Tate's going to give an update on where we are with Act 173 and an update on the Special Ed Collaborative. that has been developed.
Thank you. And the slide presentation we provided in January does have a variety of links attached to it if you want more in-depth knowledge about Act 173. So our really dedicated staff and administration have been working diligently to refine our MLSS systems, that's multi-layered systems of support, to be more responsive and collaborative in proactively meeting student needs. In fact, we recently, at our most recent leadership team, received acknowledgement from our SSIP consultant, Judy Maynard, about our significant process in establishing clear EST processes and our MLSS system to be prepared for the changes needed in time for Act 173 rule changes. I'm going to have Joe speak to these next two pieces.
So at the middle school level, we're continuing to emphasize in our programming exclusive practices, where students are receiving probably, the vast majority of students are receiving their core instruction with their general education peers. And then as needed, they have additional skills supports outside of that to provide remediation and other additional supports in that. At the high school, since we gave our presentation in January, we had a teacher-led initiative of putting forward some new benchmark assessment system in order to see if it is functional at the high school. It's going to work for us. So right now we are in the process of still collecting data on that. We received 100 license trial for free from a company in which we were able to then assign students to that. We've been able to do some progress monitoring with them. And then right now we're getting results back, and we're able to then have general education teachers working in conjunction with special educators and academic support teachers to then improve instruction to meet those students with what we're seeing from the data from that. So there's more information to come in that process.
So we're also continuing to work on implementing our new expeditionary learning, our ELA curriculum, and our illustrative math. Both are research-based core curriculums, which are the underpinnings of Act 173, is to have really high quality layer 1 or tier 1 instruction for all students. On top of that, we've got groups such as our high school group that is working on identifying the layers of intervention, then that layer 2. What are those supplemental short-term interventions that we place in place, and then we track for progress? Did they respond to that intervention, and then they return just to their core instruction? Do they need additional intervention or a change in that intervention? And having those clearly defined and having ways to collect data on, assessments on, are they making the progress that we expect, and how can we be responsive to, again, meet that need and get them back with their mainstream peers 100% of the time is our goal. So our child count data actually really does show a significant increase over this last year. Our target is to have 80% of our students in the mainstream classroom with their peers at least 80% of the time. We went from 59% the past year to now being up to 72%. That's a giant increase. And I have to give a lot of praise to my dedicated staff to work on that. It is a very collaborative approach. It takes coordination and team time with the general education staff, those ASTs, our academic support teachers, and then our special educators to work collaboratively. Who will best meet that need? So getting more flexibility and kind of tearing down our silos a little bit around funding and who has to do what. Just because it's a special ed student doesn't mean it necessarily has to be a special educator who provides that service. It's the person who's best qualified to provide that service that matters. Okay, and so finally, we've also been participating in a variety of relevant trainings around MLSS and SLD identification, SLD specific learning disabilities. That's one of the big rule changes that's happening, is how we identify learning disabilities. So we have to ensure good core instruction. We have to ensure there are interventions that were tried that are related to that. When we're seeing a student who has deficits in their achievement, And then we are going to use that data and go through a process that we've determined to be called the process of strengths and weaknesses. So that is a dual discrepancy model that's related to a neuropsychological approach to identifying learning disabilities. That's identifying that you have a deficit in a cognitive process. Let's say it's your working memory or your processing speed or your phonological awareness, your ability to do the phonology. And then do you have a corresponding deficit in your academic achievement that's related to that? So this is going to take a lot of team time with our school psychologists and our related service providers to do targeted assessments to identify this. It is a change. We are determining that that's most likely where we would start, while having also a body of evidence, gathering all of our data to really look at the student overall in making those determinations. Adverse effect is also changing in that regard. Another of the rule changes. So we are needing to really get very clear about what is specially designed instruction, because we will be saying, we came to the table, here's some evidence that we have that says adverse effect, but it's no longer the lowest 15th percentile. And they are expanding the areas we can look at for that adverse effect. So there's a lot for us to continue to work on. We're making great progress. We're developing a district-wide Act 173 MLSS steering committee to continue this work and refine and align our MLSS systems. And it's exciting work, and it's really important work because our rule changes do happen on July 1st. Tim.
So for it to work to mainstream 80%, it's going to take a lot of really good professional development. Could you talk about that, what we're doing to meet the professional development needs?
That's great.
So just recently at our in-service day, beginning of March, prior to town meeting day, we had a full day in service. Every elementary and secondary educator and related service providers as relevant participated in a training on all-day training on executive functioning coaching, as far as like how to incorporate that into classrooms.
Was that
Yeah.
on March 6th?
Yeah.
That was
It was on March 6th. It was happening at the same time as the high school.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Correct,
Mhm.
yes. And so we're continuing to spearhead that. There is already a request, I know, at the secondary level from teachers around like, how do we incorporate that into our beginning of the year processing and PD in order to prepare for the school year, so that people, and same thing with the elementary teachers, because they really want to have that as much a part of their instructional strategies as possible as they upload kids into the new school year as well. So that was received very well.
Can you say a little more about the executive functioning training? What was the gist of it? I understand executive functioning, but what do teachers do with it?
Well, it really varies based on the level of the students, but it was a lot of strategies. There was a lot of good data that was provided by the instructor, by the trainer, around what are the effects of changes that we've seen due to on kids' attention span or their ability to hold information within their brain for certain amounts of time. For example, she was able to provide information like the reason that we have 7-digit phone numbers historically was because that's about how many pieces of information human brains could keep
Interesting.
in a short amount of time. However, due to changes in how we use technology, pandemic, all kinds of different things, it's looking more like most people are holding around 3. So, and so that's a significant drop. And so for teachers to be able to be aware of that, right? And then, other data around like what are the developmental milestones that most kids at different times through their life are able to project forward, think forward about things that they need to do or plan for, the executive functioning components.
That's
and how
interesting.
we have seen a decrease in that as well. The data is supporting that there is a decrease in that.
So
I can hold 4 numbers, so I'm ahead of it.
You're above average. And it looks like 10.
one of the great strategies they provided was having a picture of what does all done look like, having that example of what does it look like to come prepared to class. So you'd have your note in it. So as a picture of your notebook, your pen or pencil, the things,
Oh.
so that there's just an easy visual reference, because we all do this.
Yeah.
Before we do whatever that activity, we mentally rehearse it and have an expectation that is organized and prioritized. So very helpful. It was a half-day training for either the elementary level or the secondary level. And I think everybody took things away that they could deliver the next day within their classroom. And it's something I had participated in a few different times. Sarah Ward has been to our state and provided trainings at different, groups. And it's just effective, and really, we need to support our students' executive functioning so that they can really encode information that they're learning and then retrieve it in an organized manner, be able to pull it up fast when they need to have that information that they've learned. Other questions?
Yeah, so you mentioned a district-wide committee regarding MLSS. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, it's just in the very beginning stages of being developed. And it's along the lines of having a district-wide EST kind of committee. And that is that we'll work to align our systems and learn from each other, from every one of our schools, about what's working and what's not. And so at this point, we have our coaches and our curriculum and assessment folks, and some of us as administrators, and Mark. And we really hope that can help us continue to improve and have more uniformity in our processes.
And the goal is with that committee to work on mainstreaming special ed into.
Well, it's our goal overall. I mean, special education processes within themselves, the IEP teams will always be looking for that on an individualized basis primarily.
Yeah, and also it's an opportunity to formally get folks from various schools to come together in a committee and work on MLSS practices, so that we're doing the work within our individual schools, but also sharing what's working with multiple leaders and teachers at other schools. So it's exciting.
So one more question. When you say teachers at other schools, do you mean other schools within the district, or are we going outside the
No,
district?
within the district.
Within the district. Okay.
So a combination of coaches, teachers, teacher leaders, administrators. Yeah, excited about it.
Okay, one more question. Sorry. Unrelated, but today's Vermont Digger had an article about special ed. I'm sure you've seen it. 3/4 of the districts in the state are under scrutiny, but it goes on to talk about how really specific, how tough the compliance regulations are.
Yeah.
Are we one of those 3/4?
So we are in targeted monitoring for one indicator only. So we are in a better place than most of our neighbors.
Yeah.
And in fact, thanks to Joe's work with his dedicated team, we were able to pass our indicator 13, which was transition planning. And that's for kids that are 16 years and older to really be thinking about what are they going to be doing after they graduate from high school. Is that additional training? Is that going into the world?
Thought about that, yeah.
And so we do that as a uniform part of our process, but they expect 100% compliance on every part of that plan. And the way you word it may make it uncompliant, even non-compliant, even though it's exactly what's happening for a student. It's what's meaningful and providing a FAPE, a free and appropriate public education for that student. So it doesn't necessarily reflect the quality of the IEP and the dedicated work and hard services that we're providing to students. It's literally about compliance. Did you, check that box? Did you write that date? Did you word that goal just right? And it's been really a piece of how the Agency of Education has trained us and how then we produce that on a case-by-case basis, because our IEPs are individualized to meet a student's needs. So how do we conform to what they're looking for while meeting our students' needs? We're always finding that balance. And I'm proud of the work that our educators do. I've been wowed by it this year. And I think that's why we have people that want to work here, is because we have responsive systems that are supportive. It is an issue across the state, and it is some of these indicators having 100% compliance thresholds is somewhat unrealistic.
I mean, an example of just like one thing that comes up is that every 3 years, we're required to have a triennial review for a new evaluation or a re-eligibility process, right, for our students. And every 4 years, we have a leap year. So they count the exact number of days from year one through year three. So then we have to make sure that because the software doesn't adjust for that. But if we don't have the right date for that, then it looks like we didn't do it on time.
Yeah.
Even if there was a leap year day,
We
like
love
that's
our
how
LOE.
precise it can be.
And they're
in
just
that
responding
process.
to the federal government's pressures, and they have made improvement. And so it may ease up at some point to some small degree. I've given them feedback about how it feels petty if you're 1 minute late for a deadline that you're non-compliant, or if you give it to them in the wrong file format, you're non-compliant, or and they've actually responded. And I want to give them credit that they are a little understaffed right now, missing Secretary of Education, a state director of special education, and many other important staff members that those roles need to be filled. And some of them are egregiously underpaid, such as the state director of special ed role, which you may have seen in that article. It's not reflective of the level of skill and experience you need. It's paid less than many of our teachers are.
Yeah. What is it? 66,000.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. Okay.
Another thing I'd like to touch on is, which is related. I think if you ask most special educators, what's the most frustrating part of their job? Paperwork would be a big response. So we are exploring some innovative ideas around that. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, we're trying to make our jobs a little more appealing by actually having case managers who do all of the documentation work. So we're looking to pilot 2 case managers for Brattleboro area towns. And that way our special educators will be really doing intervention and remediation and support, and not focused. I mean, they'll still focus on the paperwork by getting the person who's doing that work the important information they need. But that'll be taken off their plate to some degree. And we're also considering it for our middle high school as a possibility, maybe our middle school to start as a pilot.
And the percentages are low, but there are people who love the paperwork. And working with the kids can be more of a challenge in their perspective. So this is really looking to maximize the skills of our staff. So I'm excited about that.
So the other piece I just wanted to mention on is that, we're really proud to be a part of the Vermont Learning Collaborative. And I believe I may have announced, but if I haven't, we've hired an executive director. Her name is Kim Oliveira. There's a picture of Kim, but so she is a veteran educator. She's worked in a small district and held many, many hats within that district before moving to the Crest Collaborative in Massachusetts with 28 years of experience. And she took that collaborative from being truly struggling in most every way to being a top performing program with a lot of recognition within the state of Massachusetts. So we are so excited to get someone with her level of expertise who's turned around a program such as that, a full service collaborative. They had every type of program. So we're meeting Kim. Mark and I should be meeting her at the end of the month. And she'll, begin working a lot more actively at the end of the school year when she's done with her other role.
It took a long time to identify that executive director.
And very unexpected to get someone with her quality. So, great. Any other questions?
What I was about to ask, are there any other questions? Anybody out there on Zoom land have questions? Apparently not. Okay.
So, this is probably not the right time to ask this question, but it is a question of you. A number of weeks ago, there was a presentation about a consortium of providers for students with special needs.
That's this collaborative.
That is this collaborative.
Yeah. So
Okay.
they'll start, I believe, with some nationwide recruiting to get hard to find clinicians like speech language pathologists, occupational therapists, physical therapists, school psychologists, those type of special educators. Seems like almost every profession in education right now is a little hard to find. And
Behaviorists.
So can you tell me her title again? She's executive director of.
Collaborative.
Okay, thank you.
And so then she'll move on to help us with program development. and has a lot of experience with that, as well as possibly working on things such as transportation, which is always a oops, apologize. Yeah, it has a lot of potential, and the collaborative.
A common misnomer is the collaborative is not a brick and mortar.
No.
It's not a place. It's just a conceptual model.
Yes, I do remember that. And so that no one school, no one district bears the full expense. It's a shared expense. Yes, and I remember Jackie saying at one point that this kind of a program means that maybe you're driving an hour and a half instead of 3 hours for to satisfy the needs of your family and your child. Right. Okay.
It should expand our capacity.
Right.
Not overnight, but
So if there is nothing further, is there any public comment on non-agenda items? Anybody out in Zoom land? Anybody here in the room? Okay. Moving on to unfinished business. Let's talk about VSBA training. Those are dates that they currently have scheduled that are available to us for, they're available to everyone who is a member of the VSBA. I'm not sure what other training we want to talk about. You know, if we want to hire the VSBA to train with this board. If we want to collaborate with the SD board. I'm not sure how we want to go moving forward because I'm getting a lot of people not finding it particularly valuable. So I don't want to waste a lot of time and money on it.
We received a recent email from Mo Hart about training. And one of these dates, and I don't know if these are the same dates, reflects a 6-hour training in Burlington, if I'm correct.
Right.
And is it one of these dates? I think it's, I remember seeing another series of dates earlier in May. So there are another series of dates that are floating out there. And
That was training for chairs.
Yeah.
with training for chairs. Oh,
board chairs and superintendent, and I think vice chairs would fall.
Yeah, vice chairs would fall into that too.
right, exactly.
So-
So this is in effect general population training, these dates that are down here, as against being specific to the responsibility.
Yes.
Right.
These are
Okay.
things we might want to learn about, that the VSBA is offering to all members, or I suppose actually anyone with the link. So I thought it'd make.
We all don't have to do these, but
Yeah.
if you've got the time and are
Yes,
interested.
So these are offerings that are in the books available.
Available.
Gotcha.
So I, as a new board member this past year, my experience was I was determined. I attended every training possible. So I attended the 8 hours mandatory training for superintendents and board chairs. And I did every one of those hours, including collective bargaining. And a lot of it was repetitive. The collective bargaining segment was interesting, but unnecessary at this time. It's something that you would do in anticipation of that moment, I think, to have all the nuts and bolts. When I look at April 25, Board Officers 101, that's about as simplistic as you can get. I must say, that was my experience. It gave a distorted view of board responsibility. And it had unnecessary aphorisms like, if you have a mediocre school or mediocre administrators, it's reflective of a mediocre board. And they said that again and again. And I was struggling to understand the correlation of that, how that is an automatic. But there was that statement that was being made again and again. And so if we're going to do something like this, I think we need to really select the ones that will not disengage interested parties.
Can I ask a question? So I think there's two things going on. The May 30th, April 25th, June 13th, all of those are just standard fare that anybody can show up at. I think what we might be trying to be talking about is the fact that the previous board signed a contract. We did not get all the way through that contract, so they owe us some hours. And I think the question is, do we just want them to finish off that contract, where I think some of us were feeling like, no, there's possibly different things that we want to talk about. So I guess it would be nice if we could go back to the VSBA and say, hey, you only got 2/3 of the way through. You owe us 1/3. Here's what we want. Here.
Yes.
This is the subject we want.
So as I think about the last training we went through, and maybe that's a good place to start, at least in my head, is with Kenesha Williams. And it was a Zoom session. And it was a Zoom session for all board members and all administrators. And it was 90 minutes. And it was geared for board members. So I felt for the administrators who were sitting there in Zoom land, absolutely silent and never being pulled into the discussion. One of the issues that came up, and I've talked to you about this, the matrix of board responsibilities. And on the left-hand side, the big brunt of it is related to student success. And at the time we had asked, she had presented that there were other models of this same matrix. And we had asked for that. So that is yet to come. Yes.
Right now, we've got to go back to them and say, what do we want?
Yes,
So
exactly.
That's what we want.
Well, that might be something, because one of the issues that I think about is Mark has come up with a calendar that reflects his responsibilities, a mix of both to the school system, the district, as well as the reporting component to the board. And so that's the gist of your calendar. We don't have a calendar as a board. And I think that would be helpful for both the SD and the SU to have a working calendar that's always being adjusted. But I think that would help as we get to policies. Forgive me, I may sound like I know what I'm talking about, B1 and B2. Off the top of my head, which I believe are the policies specifically geared for board self-evaluation and board goal setting. And the policy committee, for the moment, pushed that out of our meetings and put that onto the boards, the board chairs, to take a stab at it and do the hard work of it as a board. And then it can flip back to policy to see what worked, what didn't work, and how we can make it better, rather than just looking at it cold. So it might be something that we need to do as a board. I don't think we've done that yet, to be here in this space.
I would second that. I think we really do need to follow up on that. And let me just throw this out. I'm a SIT grad, so I'm a big fan of experiential learning and reflection and practice. I think what would give the board a big boost is to really accomplish something concrete for the district. And in the process of doing that, intermittently reflecting on how we're working together. For example, we all agree that work needs to be done on diversity hiring, and maybe infusing the curricula with diverse viewpoints too. This might be something that our objective at the end of the workshop would be a concrete plan for the district to move ahead in diversity hiring or curricular work, or it could be something else. It could be something broader, like what are our thoughts on student engagement? What are our thoughts on lowering the dropout rate in the high school? But the point is that you work together on a really concrete goal and you accomplish it, but you also stop periodically and talk about how we're working together. Just a thought that came to me now. But what I don't want is to disengage from the work that we normally do and talk about norming. I think I've had enough of.
Are you talking about the norms for a meeting?
Yes, I think I've had enough of that.
And yet, to take a somewhat contrary position, I think it really is essential to how we work together. And I do think that even though we have gone over it again and again, and I'm going to put that down to the facilitation, that the facilitation needs to be tightened up so that at the end of a workshop, we actually have closure. It's up to the facilitator to push it, to look at that clock and to make it happen.
And this is the experiential part. Sorry to.
Yes, no, but yeah. And so we have talked about norms. We have about 20 of them. We know that, and we got bogged down in the wording of a particular norm. And it's like, we may never agree on the wording. So let's just try and get to the essence of what we're trying to do. I know, Carrie, you have come up with a matrix of norms. Carrie Emmerdon.
I think the VSBA helped me with it though, so I don't want to take credit.
But it's gone on the bottom of some of these, whether it's the agenda or the minutes. And I actually, I think I have it in my other binder. Put it in my binder because it sets a tone, and it's a lot of time we spend, whether we agree on it, whether we disagree on it, but we can't seem to get to that point. And that for me is indicative of a problem. Mm-hmm. Again, whether it's facilitation or whether it's group process, but again, the group is dependent upon the facilitator in these workshops. I also want to go, we're coming up with ideas, and this has been churning in me, the whole issue of diversity hiring. And it's really quite complicated. It's where do you go to look for those candidates? What kind of language do you use to attract them? Who do you use for window dressing? And window dressing is a terrible thing. Window dressing is tokenism. But I have been used on numerous occasions for that purpose. That's how you do it. It's also, what are you looking for in a resume? What are the moments that pop out? It means that you have to go outside of the box of the way you always do it. It means that you have to work collaboratively with others who might see a resume differently. And then what kinds of questions do you ask? What's the language that you use that invites people into the table? That provides the guarantee that their voices are going to be heard. And regardless of whether the salary is high or low in the public sector, but that there is going to be a level of respect accorded to a difference of opinion that might be forthcoming from someone. So my experience in working both in public and private sector is I play by the rules always. But that doesn't mean that I don't offer criticism internally to shake it up. but ultimately play by the rules because you work for the institution. But you also look to pry the institution out of the rut that it's in. And all institutions are ultra conservative and they're in a rut, and we all are subject to that. So I've been speaking a lot, but
to add one more thing to what you said, I love your thinking too. Always have. But networking, we have 10 people on the board with their own networks that are really untapped, I think, for diversity hiring. We got Deborah on the board. I'll take credit for it because I networked, because I met her in the waiting room of Maple Valley Physical Therapy.
truly.
It's true.
I remember when he came and introduced you. That makes something that way.
No, I just think that we have vast networks out there that are really untapped.
So as a training, am I hearing diversity hiring? Is it potential training?
Yeah, I think,
Threw that out.
I think so. I think so, because it's complicated.
Well, and again, we're looking, I think, tell me, and if I'm wrong, I think we're looking to go to the VSBA and say, you owe us. Do you have a facilitator who could help us on calendar? So far, what I've heard is calendar creation, board self-evaluation and goal setting, or coming up with a concrete goal. And I heard diversity hiring and student engagement. So if we went to them with a couple options and said, do you have facilitators who could sit down and work with us on diversity hiring? And we get the right group of people, the right stakeholders, and they facilitate so that when we leave, we've got a new plan. Or they might not have anybody who can do that. They might say, we can help you with calendar creation.
With the understanding that they're facilitating, we're doing the work.
Right.
With the understanding that it's experiential. And I'm really tired of reading PowerPoint.
Gotcha.
Or having PowerPoint read to me.
We want experiential learning.
Yes.
Okay, that's the key.
Yeah.
That's the key point there, right? Because they've got the litany of board 101 and how to be a board clerk and all of that. It's already on their website. We can go on and watch the webinars anytime we want.
And it might be an alert that we put out to the newer board members. Here are the options that are available. I'm not looking to throw out the baby with the bathwater. It's just I mean, it'll be interesting to see what they've got in place now that may be different from last year, because certainly the Zoom website facilitator was always the same person. It was Phil Gore. So I presume someone else is doing it now, unless they're rerunning those tapes.
I don't know.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see.
I'm not sure if they've replaced Phil yet.
They have.
They have.
Yes. His last day was March 17th.
Phil's was?
Yes.
Yeah.
Not that I know. Well, I don't know that they've I thought I did read somewhere that they did replace it. Well, maybe they didn't yet. I don't have a name of the person yet, but okay. But I do know that he's not there anymore.
You keep talking all night. I'm scribbling my brains out here to put together something to contact Sue Siglowski with.
About, yeah, right.
I do think committing to like just rounding the circle on norms would be like a really good thing for the board.
God, yes.
If we just had them, they were visual for every meeting. And it feels like if we're committed to just doing it, we could do it in like 15 minutes.
Yes, we could.
I feel like
Yes,
we could.
yes. And I also feel as if a subset can do it in 15 minutes and present something. If you have 11 people or more presenting, it's tough, even though that seems like a small number, but we sort of go around and around. But if a small core of us were to look at all the work that's already been done and say, hey, these are the norms that seem to repeat themselves or that are that the 19, fall into. Maybe they fall into 5 of them, which is about, I think, as many as you should do.
Well,
Yeah.
Tim can only handle 4 numbers, so we're gonna have,
I have to say, whenever I think of norms, I think of Cheers. Norm.
So I agree with Mark. It would be nice to have closure on norms because we have done all of that work between Mel Motel, and this is the SD board with Mel Motel, and then with the VSBA as well. The VSBA session that we had where we walked around the room and we had the newsprint. That's a classic exercise that the kids did with the for PD on March 6th, but it gets people up on their feet.
Yeah.
The only problem with that is we didn't actually have time to go around to every newsprint. We sort of stood in front of the one that we had worked on, and that I already knew what was on that sheet, right? I needed time to go around. And again, that is an error in facilitation because it didn't give closure to the experience. But we could go back to those sheets. And I know that I did not take photographs of it, but I think Kelly did. I'm pretty sure she took photographs of those so we can actually see. Because the sheet we agreed that were really pivotal for us were the ones that, what do we need to do? What has not worked, right? You go to that. What has not worked and what would we do differently in the next go round?
And is there a general consensus that you would like me to put the norms that were from the old agendas back on the agendas? Because I can do that very easily.
Well, we haven't figured out what the norms are for us yet.
Okay.
I don't think. I think maybe a small subset of us between board and administrators, we could put something together and use it and then let people criticize it and then change it. Right? It's not cast in stone, but it gives us something to work with, which is what I like about the matrix that Carrie has come up with.
Kelly, I see your hands up.
Yeah, I just wanted to, Deborah, I'm sorry, what you thought I took pictures of, which one was that? The one with Mel Motel for the SD or the other one?
With Kenesha
With
Williams.
Kenesha. I believe I did take pictures and I can try and locate them and send them out.
Yes, because I remember you took pictures, yeah.
Thank you. Great. Okay. That's a lot to chew on. But, keep sending me more ideas if you think of anything and you want to pop it out in an email or call me or whatever. And
So I just want to ask Jackie, because you've had some past experience on this board. I'm sorry, maybe I'm stepping out of turn to do this. Is that okay?
that's fine by me.
Okay, thank you. But, your time on the board, your time off the board.
Well, I always think establishing the norms is important, and I agree it could get done very quickly. I've been thinking a lot, listening to this conversation about the enthusiasm that we had for a little while about getting back with the VSBA was mostly centered around the idea that there was a big, there were a lot of board members, or there were some board members who are currently not on the board that were really bringing like their political agenda to the board work and really not paying as much attention to the fiduciary responsibility of the board. And so we reached out to the VSBA, in my memory of it, as a way to kind of get everybody reined in on the things that the board actually does and less of things that are not in the purview of the board. And I don't know what trainings you guys have done, but information on that would have been super helpful at that time. I don't know how helpful it is now. I don't know, because some of the people that were maybe creating those issues are not on the board, but I just wanted to mention that I think that that's how we got here back at the VSBA, because the board was doing things that weren't ours to do. But the diversity hiring feels to me like the one item that we have talked about the most and had the least amount of movement on, despite many good intentions. So if we were just going to pick one thing that I think is like the most important, if they have a training, definitely that one, because yeah, well, the others, I feel like we could do on our own, or you could do on your own, but clearly we can't do that one on our own, so.
And I agree with that because I think it's much more targeted than something like student engagement, which is like, could be a million things.
Okay.
Yeah, and so going to fiduciary responsibility, I know that, and I know this is maybe a troublesome topic, but I think we pay a lot of money to the VSBA for membership. And in terms of my experience this past year, the return on the investment has not been that strong. And it gives me pause to say, we're a part of the VSBA right now for the next year. I want to see something this year as I consider my responsibility of sanctioning another contract.
I would recommend sticking with the VSBA. I think I reported out in the fall. I attended a VSBA, I think, 2-day workshop. It was for boards and superintendents. I went by myself, but it was a missed opportunity. It was a great weekend.
Good.
It was really good.
Yeah.
The whole focus was on student leadership and how students play a role in governance. And I think our boards would have gotten a lot out of that, especially the work that we've started in terms of having students on the school board and really engaging in student voice. But 3/4 of that workshop was essentially high school students talking to superintendents and chair people, and then facilitating small group workshops. I thought it was really inspiring. I don't know what the May day looks like in Burlington. I'd be interested in seeing what the agenda is, if that's a little more technical than a 2-day workshop at Lake Maury. But we could ask, see what the agenda looks like for the May 6-hour in-person workshop. And I think that's tied to 2 1-hour Zoom meetings.
Yes, that was part of that.
What does it cost? About 20,000?
I don't think it's that much. I was gonna say 12, 14,
Wait a minute, what are we talking about?
the
Cost
dues,
for VSBA.
VSBA,
Yeah.
what we spend.
I thought it was 11 as well.
Okay,
I thought it
I'm
was 11.
thinking.
Yes, but I think the workshops are on top of that.
Some of
Some
them,
of them
yes,
are,
some of them, no.
Right.
Some of them, a lot of what they send you, if you get your weekly email from them and they say, hey, we're having a webinar, most of those are just free.
Right.
Like you just click
Yes.
on the link and go. I think occasionally they will say $125 and we will bill your SU.
Right.
But that week was also a really great opportunity to network, not only for superintendents, but for boards and a combination of boards and superintendents. And just sharing, what unique challenges are that are happening throughout the state.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I think it was a missed opportunity. It was great for me. But if I was there with a group of board members, I think it would have been
Wow, we would come
a
back.
really nice
We would come
opportunity.
back to this place
Yeah.
as a powerhouse, spreading out those ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it would be nice to have those kinds of experiences. Right. And sometimes a 2-day workshop, as much as that means giving up your personal life for 2 days, but they can be very valuable because there's that time and you're networking with people across the state, I presume. Yes, across the state. I think that's invaluable. To sort of sit at dinner and hear someone else's ideas about what's going on. I mean, that's what businesses do all the time.
My 2 cents.
Yeah, not a bad 2 cents.
Say it again.
I said, not a bad 2 cents.
Yeah.
And
So I'm
you're
curious.
talking specifically about the Lake Maury retreat that is in the fall that I believe.
Yeah, I think it's a typical retreat that happens
Yeah.
every year.
Yeah.
I understand Lake Gloria is beautiful.
It is very nice.
I'd love to go. Basin Harbor is
There's a
beautiful.
golf
too.
course too.
Yeah,
Here we go. We'll have our board retreat at like the beach.
well, a lot of good stuff can happen when you are away from home and you're away from responsibilities and you're away from work, right? It's not like it's taking place in the building.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. So I have a lot to talk to Sue about. And I'm going to get with you again.
Yeah, because Sue actually reached out to me like 2 days ago, and
Oh,
I'm
did she?
like, I'm waiting to push this over to Ann. So
Well,
this
she
is
will
the
say-
perfect
Okay.
time.
One great thing about Sue is she's so accessible.
Yes.
You leave a phone call and she'll call you right back.
Yeah.
yeah, I agree.
Yeah, pretty sure most of the people I used to have to talk to there are not there anymore.
Right, I think it's probably just Sue.
That's good because I don't like talking to those people. And I have a calendar review scheduled. Does everyone have a copy of the calendar that Mark made at the beginning of?
I can.
I don't,
Yeah,
Color-
the rainbow calendar.
I can. Thank you. Thank you. I mean, I have a copy at home, but
I can,
yeah, so I've got, yes,
So what we have.
thank you very much.
What we have left for presentations with the SU board in May would be an opportunity take a look at community partnerships. Field trip opportunities now that we're post-COVID, knock on wood. And mentoring partnerships that we have in place. With a June meeting focused on, again, panorama results and a reflection of school climate. Kind of an end of the year look at what is our data saying. What I would suggest is that we add, because we had scheduled an ELL refugee presentation in March, and something happened where that didn't happen. I don't know if it was like a snowstorm or
oh, could be.
I'm not sure, but I think this board would benefit from hearing a report from Deb Coombs and Jen Course on the ELL program and refugee update. Because we've had lots of new students.
English language.
English language learners, okay. Mhm. Mhm.
That's something we've had on the schedule, and I think it's the only one that we've skipped for some reason.
Where would you like to put that, Mark?
I think a panorama could take a while, so I'm thinking May would be
Okay.
good for that. Because that is an example of a partnership, community partnership as well.
Community partnerships, these are for partnerships between whom?
Local agencies and schools.
Not students engaging with the community. And
I think there could be an element of that too. Yeah, it's not a presentation we've put together yet, but that's the concept of the topic.
And you said you had a couple or just the one?
That was just the one I was thinking.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. I will add
I
that.
was really interested in that community partnership type of.
Mhm.
I will add that to May's meeting. I will add anything else that anyone else wants me to put on there. Because that's how I roll as a chair. I think the only new business we have are new hires. Yes?
Yes, yeah. So I'll start with some resignations. We have 3 resignations. Isabel Higgins, Cheryl McDaniel Thomas, and Joe Gruda was here tonight. He's not leaving us completely, but he is resigning from his position.
Hold on.
Wait a minute, so he's resigning?
Joe is moving on to become a social worker within our BUHS Behavioral Services.
Oh, I see. So,
Oh, that's
it's
good.
a
Yeah,
shift.
path change.
Okay. uh-huh.
If he was here, and I want to still mention how proud I am of the work that Joe has done at BAMS and BUHS
Mhm.
and really leading us towards more inclusive practices. It's, I think, been a very tough position given the pandemic and the staffing challenges persist. And so this has been a really good move for him and his family. He's also a licensed clinical social worker, which is a passion of his, which brings us interns from the Smith Amherst area that come up and do their internship with us. So we benefit while they're learning by having additional clinicians in training. And so we'll welcome him as an important player within those behavioral services while I'm looking for his replacement.
That's what we want with diversity.
Right,
Mhm. Mhm.
great.
So those are the 3 resignations. We want to do that.
Yeah, I would entertain a motion to accept those resignations.
I move that we accept the resignations as stated by Mark with regret.
Thank you.
All right, and we have 2.
We should probably vote on that.
Oh, yeah.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. We have 2 new hires, Joe Gruda. We just talked about Joe, moving on to a special ed social worker position. And Jennifer Torville will be moving to early childhood special ed position. And she is leaving the Oak Grove preschool program. Making that move.
Our former school psychologist. So I know they're very excited to have her on our early childhood special ed team.
She's one of us.
Yeah.
And you did get to read the letters of introduction that Mo sent, or somebody sent to us?
I have copies that people.
Yeah, we got to email those.
Yes, yeah, and mhm.
Great news.
Yeah.
So I move that we accept what Mark just said,
New hires.
the new hires.
Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed or abstentions? Okay,
Can I just say what a pleasure it is to read those summary
those
statements?
are nice.
I
Yeah.
think, and I find
That's
it very
definitely-
helpful to know how many people applied for a position, how many were actually interviewed. It just gives a feel for what's going on in terms of movement and educators.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think it was a much needed change.
yeah.
Agree.
This is a position that we were unable to fill all year. So that social worker position, so.
I'm familiar with Joe's work from back when we had a STEP program.
Yeah.
And was impressed with him then, so.
So you lose him.
Well, I lose him as my coordinator. So
Yes.
I'm actively searching and I'm sad to lose him because he's really been a wealth of knowledge.
Mm.
And really, I think he may have made this decision earlier, but with the other coordinators and special ed director moving on, he felt obligated to help provide stability. And I really, it's been very valuable. Yeah.
Wonderful. Is there anything else? I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved. Madam Chair, what is it that you always say?
There being no further.
There being no further business before this board, I move we adjourn.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 And we are adjourned at 7:03.